Welcome to Forum 360, where we have a global outlook from a local view. I'm your host, Leia Love, and today we have the beautiful Rema Cole. She is the founder and facilitator of Healing Hearts Ministry, which was founded in 2005. Today we are going to talk about making a difference one heart at a time. Thank you for joining us today.
And thank you so much for having me on your show, Miss Leah. This is a great opportunity to share with you and your viewers. And I love the topic that you chose, making a difference one heart at a time. That's really global. I like that.
So tell us about your ministry.
Well, my ministry, Healing Hearts Ministry, is a ministry that ministers to people who are struggling with hurt, resentment, unresolved issues by life's emotional deposits, unforgiveness, and the Healing Hearts Ministry is a ministry that can meet those needs. What I've incorporated is what I call heart transplant sessions. And what we do in those sessions, we go through a series of sessions to break down and get a good overview of what may be triggering some of those things. So the Healing Hearts Ministry is a ministry that can minister to those needs.
So tell me, how did you even get involved in starting this? What was your trigger?
Oh boy. Well, I have to say that it was a series of events that brought me to this point. And it always is a series of events that can bring you to a certain point in life. But one of the triggers that I got when my sister passed away early, it was from breast cancer, and my family is a family that believed in the power of prayer. So, we went into a series of prayer. We prayed over and over, God, you're not going to let this happen. And at the time, she had a 2-year-old daughter. And so my sister wanted to raise her own child. She loved her child. So, and we're a very close family. It was my only sister as well. So, the attachment was real close. We did quite a few things together. So that, when she passed away, that kind of broke my heart and put me in a frozen spot. There was a lot of resentment and anger and unforgiveness, and I had to work through a series of trying to set myself free, get myself back on a road of freedom. And just through God ministering to me through others, and the roadmap that He had placed in front of me, I was able to gather tools to help recover. And so in doing that, I ended up writing a book, came out of that, and the title of that book was Help, I'm Sick, I Have a Heart Condition, which, by the way, was the topic of my first message that I gave. That was a road that I hadn't chosen for myself either, but in that He was challenging me to recover and to get up again and live the best life that you can live, because my life is in front of me, it's not behind me. So what I can do is move forward. I can't change my past, but I can move forward and go in a direction of prosperity and live the best life that God has for me.
Now, in moving forward, a lot of times I know people think, oh, you lost somebody a year ago, you're not over that yet. Or it's been 5 years, you're not over that yet.
Right.
So, what do you tell people who feel like they're under a deadline or a timeline to heal?
Well, I don't believe there is a timeline per se. Like I said earlier, you can't change the past, but you can change where you're going. There's always going to be triggers. Even today, there are times that I miss my sister, and that's just a fact. As like right now, gosh, I wish she was here to see this interview and to support me, but she's with me in heart. And believe it or not, even though she's not physically here, she is a part of this. She is what helped to make me what I am today. So it was not a loss in that sense. It was also a gain.
And you know what? That's good, because I think that people just ultimately need to know that there is no timeline.
No.
You know, you heal at your own rate and your own pace.
Correct.
If it takes you 1 year, if it takes you 5 years, you know, you just
Right.
have to do it at your own pace and not trying to be in society's view of what's
Right.
a correct time.
Right.
So what do you believe is the starting process in changing one's heart?
Well, I think forgiveness is a big issue.
So let's define forgiveness. What does
Okay.
that look like?
Forgiveness is releasing one of a debt owed. It takes me back to a story that is in the Bible. It's in Matthew chapter 18 when we talk about the unforgiving servant. And just to let our listeners know a little bit about that story, there was a servant that went to his Lord, small l, and said he owed him some money. But he asked him, be patient with me. I will pay you what I owe you. Just give me a little time. So the Lord, the small l, said, okay, I'm going to give you grace. I'm going to give you time to pay this debt. So the servant was grateful for that. Now, on the flip side, that same servant, when someone came to him and asked him for forgiveness, or I know I owe you, give me a little time to pay this debt back. I will pay thee all that I owe you. Well, this servant that was forgiven the large debt by his Lord, he refused to do it. Now, what a position of self-righteousness to put yourself in. You know, it's okay for you to be forgiven, but you can't forgive someone else. So, but and there's always a repercussions for behaving that way. So when the Lord heard this, a small l for Lord, when he heard that the servant would not forgive the debt, well, he became angry with him and he threw him into prison. He threw him to the jailers. So we don't want to put ourselves in a position of being bound, per se, if I can go there with this discussion. When you refuse to let someone go, spiritually speaking, your dreams and visions, they stop flowing. You can't hear from the Lord as you once did because there is a blockage there keeping you from receiving those downloads that God is sending to you. So God wants us to be free believers, to move about the earth in the freedom that He's already provided for us. He's already paid the debt for us, so we just have to receive what He's already done for us.
You know, I like how you said a debt owed, because I'm sure I probably still have a little unforgiveness in my heart about some situations.
Well, nobody's perfect.
but in saying that, it's not that somebody owes me physically,
Right.
or, you know, with money or so per se. It's that I'm like, you owe me an apology.
Yes.
You owe me this, or you owe me to say that this should have been another type of way, or you were wrong. So I really like that, because a lot of times people think that, oh, I have forgiven somebody, but if you put it in that context of, have they paid their debt? Do you feel like that debt is still out there standing? Then no, you haven't forgiven them.
Correct. And you know, a lot of people feel like if I stand my ground until they apologize, you know, I'm going to be the victor. But in essence, you're hurting yourself, because here's the key. Forgiveness is not for the one that owes you. Forgiveness is for yourself, so that you can walk in the freedom that God has intended for you to walk in. So why not give yourself a gift and say, you know what? I'm going to turn that over to God, because He said, vengeance is mine, I shall repay. You know, God is not going to allow someone to constantly offend you and walk over you without stepping in. But you have to give God room to handle it, and just walk in peace and walk knowing that God is for you and God will handle the situation. But in the meantime, I owe myself. I owe myself a present. So
Because
why not let 'em
otherwise,
go?
you'll end up in jail of your own mind.
There you go. There you
In
go.
reference to your story.
Yes.
All right. So How can we, I know we've talked about this just a little bit, but how else, if you want to expand upon it, can you realize or recognize that you've truly forgiven someone?
Well, I believe that, now, also, I want to throw this in, forgiveness or releasing somebody can be kind of tricky because it's kind of an intangible. If that individual or person is not in your social circle, okay, we can devise ways a lot of times to not be in the presence of the one that is offended. We know how to avoid, right? So, but I believe when you can see that individual or that circumstance and the sting is gone,
Okay.
I believe that you're well on your way to total recovery from that situation, to wish well for them. You know, pray for them. And that's a hard thing to do, to pray for someone that has truly offended you, especially when you know you haven't done anything to them. But you have to look at possibly the spot they were in when the offense happened. We all grow at different spots and different levels in this life. They may not understand truly what they have done until the same thing possibly could be done to them. You know, you can't judge people. You have to be in another person's shoes to kind of see where they are. So in a way, you can give them the benefit of doubts, like, you know what, they didn't know what they were doing. Just like our Father says in heaven, he says, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
You know, I think that's one of the things that we really don't do in the heat of the moment is look at the mindset in the background of what's going on with somebody else in that instance. And that's probably one of the things that a lot of people don't talk about and teach you how to do. It's just, you were wrong. You need to let them know that you were wrong. Or we're just not going to talk until you admit that you were wrong. If you guys are just tuning in, I am talking to Ms. Rema Cole, and she is the founder and facilitator of Healing Hearts Ministry. And we are talking about healing and making a difference one heart at a time. So going back to you called them heart sessions?
Heart transplant sessions.
Heart transplant sessions. What do those look like, and how would somebody get involved in those?
Okay, the heart transplant sessions, I do them approximately 2 times a year at my church. And let me give a shout out to my church, to Overseer Dr. Samuel L. Hampton II, and Elder Lady Miranda at the Faith Place. And my sessions take place there, like I said, approximately 2 times a year. They go about from 8 to 10 weeks. And we will start from the basics, which are the root of all hurt. We will start there in the curse of creation. You know, we're born into a broken world. And we have to come to a place of accepting God's idea for life, not our idea, God's idea, so we can walk in his pathway and understand somewhat why people do what they do. And the only people or persons that we can work on is ourselves, because I want to walk in freedom. I want to be at peace with God. I want all that God has for me. In Proverbs, it talks about guard your heart. We have to guard our heart, for out of it are the issues of life. So every decision that you're making in life comes from a deposit, negative or positive, that has been put into you as you're growing, as you're, from childhood all the way up. There's deposits along the way, along the road that we're walking. And sometimes we can get negative deposits that causes us to act negatively in certain situations.
Okay. And so in the session, is it a question and answer type? Is it more how does that format look like?
It's sort of what I do is teach. I throw scenarios, there's questions, and we all take our time. Everyone is involved in the class, free to talk, free to ask questions. And
because I know sometimes that can kind of scare people if they're like, are they going to make me talk while I'm here?
No,
Because
no.
I don't want to tell everybody why I'm not forgiving anybody
No.
or something like that. So if they have that
Trust
option
me.
to be able to, it's an open, if they want to, if they don't want
Correct.
to, they can sit there and just absorb
nothing
all
like
the information.
that. I'm the last one to make people feel intimidated, at least I feel. And it's a comfortable environment. You find out, oh, I'm not the only one dealing with this issue. So realize that you're not the only one that has an issue. And I never approach the class from a standpoint that I've arrived and I've got it all together. There are things that still bother me too because I'm a human. But I have a resource. I have the Word of God to go to help straighten me out and get me on that right path and keep it moving. One statement that I say in the back of one of my books is, journey on, be strong, and keep it moving.
Keep it moving. I know that's right. So what are some of the hindrances to wholeness? And I guess to kind of piggyback off of that, when people have the mindset of what happens to the person who has offended me and hurt me?
Well,
if that's one of their big hindrances.
Okay, well, that's something that you have to release. Okay, let me go here. My class motto is, we don't heal in order to forgive, but we forgive in order to heal. It's the opposite of what the natural person wants to do. You want to heal first. You want to feel that that person has acknowledged what they have done. But you can't wait around for that to come. A lot of times it could take years for a person to come around and finally admit of their wrongdoings. As a matter of fact, a story just dropped in my mind and I have to tell it real quick. Someone that I know, they went through some bad times with someone, and that person never apologized for the wrongdoings. And as the years went on down the road, this person went on with their lives, did new things, spoke no ill will of the offender, and it took that person about, probably 15 years or so before they actually picked up the phone and say, you know what, I got to get something off my chest. So know that when you walk in the pathway of righteousness, God will fight for you, because you never know how that other person is feeling. God may be showing them different things that they need to release so that they can be free themselves. So know that God has the situation in His hand, and in His time, He'll handle it. So once again, we have to give ourselves the gift of, I release you, and I'm going to keep it moving.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about you. Actually, no, one last question on that. What are some things, if somebody is going through their release process, what are some of the things they should avoid doing? Because even though they may look at it as helpful, it's really not as beneficial as they think.
Okay, one major thing I think they should avoid doing is rehearsing the hurt. Because the more you rehearse it, the more you nurse it, the more it becomes alive to you. And the sting, you're scratching the sore over and over and over again. So don't rehearse it.
And
it's behind you.
It's so easy to do because you're playing this scenario out in your mind. And when I get the opportunity to tell this person, and then before you realize it, and I know this happened to me before I realized it, I had created this story that had these extra pockets in it. So now you realize you're upset about some stuff that really didn't happen, but it felt like it almost could have with the story.
The
I
enemy,
agree with that.
the enemy does a great job on our imaginations, okay? You know, with that, when we talked about roots, with that, here's all the branches, here comes the branches. This could have happened, and that could have happened, and I bet they did this. And he'll take your mind off into a world that that didn't happen. So don't take yourself there.
Okay, so now back to you. How many books have you written, and where can we purchase your books?
Okay, I've written 3 books, and I have one that should be published by the end of this year.
Okay.
You can get my books on Amazon.com,
Okay.
Barnes & Nobles, or you can purchase them directly from me. And you can go on my website, remacole.com,
Spell that for us.
REMACOLE,
Okay.
all together, one word, remacole.com.
Okay.
And you can request the books that way.
And what's the name of the books?
The name of the first book, as I mentioned earlier, is Help, I'm Sick, I Have a Heart Condition. Then I have a follow-up workbook that helps support the heart transplant sessions class.
Okay.
And then my third one was Packing for the Journey. And I haven't quite titled, the fourth one's coming, we're gonna wait and see what God says on that one.
I was trying to get my little sneak peek. Okay. So what is something that, you know, you would really love for the listeners to be able to take with them as far as a piece of advice that you feel like you would really love to leave with them?
One thing I'd like to leave with the listeners, I'm going to tell a really quick story about a little boy, and I'm going to name him Jason today. And Jason told his mother one day, Mom, I'm going to go on a journey. I'm going to leave home and I need to go on a journey. And she says, well, where will you go? And he says, well, I just need to get out and see the world and do things. Okay, he's about 9 years old. Okay, so he packs his backpack. As he stuffs it full of things, you can see his socks hanging out, you know, from the side zipper. And he has all things in there that he needs, thinks he needs for this journey. So as he proceeded to leave the house, she asked him, well, what will you do for money? And he says, oh, I'll just come home on the weekends. So she said, okay. So she gave him a hug and wished him well on his trip. So when he proceeded out of the back door, he headed towards this creek in the backyard. So she scurries up the steps and she looks out the window to see where he's going. Of course, if he had gone too far, she would have went after him. So he's at the back creek and she watches him. And then after a while, maybe an hour or so, he decides to turn around and come back home. So he's walking back to the house. And she runs downstairs and she busies herself in the kitchen as if she wasn't worried about him. And when he hit the door, she looks up, oh, you're back so soon? And he says, yes. She said, well, did you enjoy your journey? And he says, yes, but I could have enjoyed it better if my bags hadn't been so heavy. So God says, for I know the plans that I have for you, and they're good and not evil, and to bring you to an expected end. So God wants us to live our lives without the burdens and the weights that life can put on us. And he wants us to walk in the freedom that he's already given us. He's already paid the debt for us on the cross. So he's saying here, just take it and walk in me. And when you do get encumbered with the weight, turn it over to me and let me handle it, because we are going to walk into offenses. Offenses will come, but God can handle them all. But we want to walk in the best life yet that God has for us.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. Real quick, if you could, in like 20 seconds, give me a picture when someone is not able to let go of their bags. When they're not able to let go of their forgiveness, what would that really look like for someone in terms of guilt, in terms of hope? What would a life like that look like versus what it could look like?
Well, you're restricting yourself. You're restricting yourself from seeing the good things out of life. Where a spot maybe was once dark, it can become light again. We can't change, once again, we can't change the past. You have to kind of constantly remember that. You can't change what happened behind you, but you can change where you're going. So you have to decide, I'm going to give myself this gift because I deserve it.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, a lot of times I think people don't realize the areas that them blocking themselves, basically. Whereas, you know, some people, well, because so-and-so is going to be here, I can't go to this place. Well, because this happened here, I can't travel. You know, I'm afraid of this big world that's out here because people may hurt me or they may do this and that. And, you know, there's so much to see and experience.
Correct.
That I think some people, you know, I truly do pray for their minds in that they're able to give that up because there's so much that they're missing out on. But thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you talking about forgiveness and healing hearts.
Yes.
We want to thank Miss Rema again, and you can reach her at www.remacole.com. She also has a conference September 14th at the Holiday Inn in Akron, Ohio, and it is located at her website as well. We want to thank you for joining us on Forum 360 for a global outlook with a local view. I'm your host, Leia Love. Thank you.
Forum 360 is brought to you by John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, the Akron Community Foundation, Hudson Community Television, the Rubber City Radio Group, Shaw Jewish Community Center of Akron, Blue Green, Electric Impulse Communications, and Forum 360 supporters.